Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Good evening and welcome to yet another episode of Clause YouTube channel, the Strategic Frontlines. Today we have with us Ambassador D P Srivastava, retired. He was our ambassador to Iran and he's also author of the book Pakistan, Ideologies, Strategies and Interests. We also have with us Lieutenant General Amit Sharma, PVSM, AVSM, VSM retired. He was our Force Commander-in-Chief of the Strategic Force Command. We will discuss today, is there a possibility of limited nuclear war? But before we start that, we all know that today there has been a lot of new activities which have taken place. So what we'll do is we'll first start with the discussion on the Israel's attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. And to discuss that, we have with us Ambassador Srivastava. To discuss that, first we will start with certain facts, whatever has been going on till now, and I'll just like to flash that out. As far as the conflict is concerned, Israel has stated that it has targeted 50 targets, and main among them have been the Natanz primary nuclear installation, where 60% of the uranium enrichment takes place. And it may be a softer target as compared to Fordo, which has geographically it is more protected, but the concerns for nuclear radiations and chemicals are still there. The objective, what Israel states, is to hurt Iran's nuclear infrastructure and ballistic missile factories. The target has been mixed. Both military and nuclear installations have been hit, as well as Mossad has tried to hit or assassinate military and nuclear scientists, as you can see on the foyer. So there were some of the major generals from the Revolutionary Guard and other who were hit. All this was happening when so many rounds of talks were going on between the US and the Iran. So my first question is to Ambassador Srivastava. How do you perceive the situation? Firstly, Israelis state that it had kept the Americans in the loop. So all these negotiations, do you feel were a smokescreen to mislead Iran while the Israelis were planning this out? And secondly, how do you feel that the Russians and Chinese are going to react? Because their support to Iran will be there because they have a very close relationship with them. But will it go in for military aid and so forth? So your views on that? Ambassador Srivastava, you need to unmute your mic.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Roshan, for having me for this show. Iran and Israel, as you know, has a checkered relationship. During Shah's time, they were close military allies. Shah used to say that Israel and Iran, they are two people surrounded by a sea of Arabs. Now, this changed with the revolution. And last year, we saw there were two exchanges between Israel and Iran in April and September, which were the first direct military exchanges. Now, the negotiations on the resumption of the nuclear deal, which were going on between Americans and Iranians, the initial indications were very positive. Witkoff at one point Witkoff was the American chief negotiator, and he came up with this statement suggesting that the deal was very close. and the deal revolved around the Iranian bottom line was 3.67% enrichment, which is allowed under NPT. Witkoff went back on his words and had to and said that Trump will accept only 0% enrichment. Now this is since then there was a stalemate. To say that this was a deliberate ruse, it's I think going a little too far. Certainly the Iranians and judging by the statements from Iranian side, were hoping for a deal, and so did President Trump. In fact, his last statement, as recent as last month, he said that it's almost done. So I don't think this was a ruse. There's another way of looking at it, and this is, if you keep in mind the American statement issued after the Israeli strike, they have said two things. The Israeli action is unilateral, and in conclusion, the American statement said that Israel must not attack American targets. Now, this leaves out Iran must not attack American targets. Now, this leaves out Israeli targets. So there's a certain distance between the American and the Israeli positions, even assuming that there was at some level, there was some complicity, as some people would suggest. I'm not in a position to judge that. The second point is that, the regional neighbors have distanced themselves. In fact, Saudi Arabia has very strongly condemned Israeli action and called for the Security Council to take action. So on diplomatic fronts, things are not have gone as well for Israel as it would have expected. Your second question was, how would Russia and China react? Both have opposed and will continue to oppose it, but whether they will go to the extent of taking military action, that is doubtful. That is doubtful because, let's look at the different. Russia is engaged in Ukraine war, and China has bigger economic stakes on the Arab side. China's relations with Israel have taken a dip, so China has no compunctions about criticizing or condemning Israeli action, but they would not go to the extent of actually militarily helping Iran because they have bigger stakes, much bigger stakes on the other side of the Gulf.
Israelis have stated that it will not be a short war, it will be a long drawn war. And Iran, we know, will definitely retaliate. It has started retaliating with drones and all. Now, if we try to see Iranian capabilities, we'll see that they also have missiles. I mean, they have short range missiles, they have medium range missiles, and they are quite well equipped, they state, as far as the missiles is concerned, and it can reach Israel. So the question is how long you feel it will go on, and do you feel Iran after this will accept a nuclear deal, or it will take this as an example to go in for nuclear weapons? What will be the likely outcome you see? What Israel is going to achieve? And do you feel that Iran will come to the negotiation table as far as nuclear deal is concerned?
As far as I'm concerned, I served as Indian ambassador to Iran for 4 years till 2015. I don't think Iran will come back to the negotiating table. So if that is the calculus which Israel has or US has, President Trump has said that the hardliners in Iran who oppose the deal as the deal which was being offered by Trump administration, they are gone, and Iran should come back to the table before further damage. I don't think that's going to happen. It is going to to strengthen Iranian resolve. And there will be very strong push now for nuclearization. If there was any hope that they will, there was a hope that they will go back to status quo ante and resume the nuclear deal. I think that is gone now.
So do you feel there is going to be a more regional impact in the sense of countries coming closer? Will Israel be isolated, or it may not be the case?
A regional dimension I mentioned at the outset. There has been a détente between Saudi Arabia and Iran for past 3 years now, which is a very positive thing, and that is what kept the oil prices down. For 1.5 years or 2 years, the Israel-Hamas war has gone on. I think that is going to hold, and it is reflected in the Saudi statement, which is a very strong statement. It has strongly condemned Israel's unilateral action. So that equation will hold. As far as the other Gulf countries are concerned, like UAE, Bahrain, they all have the same interests. They are oil exporting countries, and the oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz, which Iran can easily choke off. They don't want that. So these countries will remain neutral. They will condemn it in statements, but otherwise, militarily, they will remain neutral. A very interesting dimension from India's point of view, the Pakistani position. And I think from Pakistan's point of view, the good old days are back. You look at the history of Pakistan, it has lived off trouble in the neighborhood. So it made money out of Afghan jihad for 20 years in the 80s, and it made money again after fall of Taliban Al-Qaeda regime, which it had brought to power in the 90s. So between 9/11 and 2021, it got a further $20 billion. So it's basically, its economy is in doldrums. The Pakistani budget, which was presented day before, and my article came out in Hindustan Times, I have analyzed it. The interest payments and the military expenditure completely exhausts the federal government's share of revenue. So the rest of Pakistan government is going to run on fresh loans. So for Pakistan, this is a God-given opportunity. They'll make more money out of this war from the Americans, and maybe this is the reason why General Munir, who's now got himself promoted to Field Marshal's rank, has got this invitation to Washington to take part and to witness the parade. And you also have to keep in mind that Iran and Pakistan have had 2 missile exchanges. The first one was in 2019, a day before Pulwama. There was a identical attack on Iranian territory in which 27 IRGC guards were killed by a car bomb-laden being driven by a Pakistani national, which rammed into the bus. And in retaliation, General Soleimani, who was then alive, had let off a missile barrage. The second barrage took place, more recently. This was in 2022. So this was on Asim Munir's beat. So I think Pakistanis will take this opportunity to backstab Iran. Probably they have already done so.
I think Middle East is going to have a lot of turmoils and tensions as the days progress. And the biggest thing is the nuclear Fordo, that installation, that should not be hit, because the radiation leak will then have impact on the whole region. So I hope good sense prevails on both Israel as well as Iran, so that it is contained. And I think global players need to mediate and come out with some kind of a solution. So now we come to the next part of our podcast, which was basically to see whether the limited nuclear war is possible or not. Often we talk about the limited nuclear war is defined as the use of small number of low yield nuclear weapons against limited military targets. Basically, it is to justify the flexible nuclear response, and it is a global, it is a Cold War concept which has resurfaced. Now, objective, what they say is to contain the conflict and aims to avoid the escalation to all-out nuclear conflict. So now here I would like to call in General Sharma and ask him whether is it, can you specify, is there any definition of a low-yield nuclear weapon? And secondly, can the nuclear use be controlled? Because the risk of uncontrolled escalation to full scale nuclear war is significant. So, what are your views on that?
Roshan, firstly, thanks for calling me and and lovely to hear and speak about Iran. He's the expert. For us, India, I think Israel and Iran are both our good friends. So very unfortunate that this has happened, and I think it will have some effect on our economy if nothing else. And like Mr. Srivastava said, Pakistan is always ready to jump into where it can make some advantages out of it, but it's fine. And the point about Asif Munir, I'll come to the nuclear part later, but Asif Munir going to be invited to Washington. I somehow personally feel that we should not give Pakistan so much importance now. It's like America treats Mexico, we should treat Pakistan like that. Yes, if they step out of line, we should hit hard the way we've done. In fact, hit even harder. But our news channels and all, I don't think we should give them the kind of importance we're giving. We should treat them as if they don't exist. Whether General Munir goes somewhere, not somewhere, I don't think it should make a difference to us. So I think we should grow out of Pakistan and look ahead. Yeah, sorry, your question about limited nuclear war. Roshan, firstly, there is no such thing as limited nuclear war in today's context. But this phrase has been used since the time nuclear weapons were introduced, and not once Russia got them and things like this, from 49 onwards. Now, what exactly is limited nuclear war and what are the connotations? If we talk of limited nuclear war, there are three things what I think the Russians and the Americans were trying to say. One was of limited yield of the weapons. Secondly, limited objectives. And thirdly, confined to a limited area. Now, when you talk of limited yields, the funny part is that now there are 2 or 3 kind of tactical nuclear weapons that the Americans are using. One is the B-61, B-62, which is deployed in 5 countries in Europe. And these are the gravity bombs. Now, their yield goes from 0.3 kilotons to about 340 kilotons, and some reports say even 400 kilotons. Now, can you call them low-yield weapons? Hiroshima and Nagasaki were 15 kilotons and 21 kilotons. So if you are talking of a tunable yield, or as you call dialer yield, from 0.3 to 300 or even 400, I think they're proper nuclear weapons. And these are deployed in 5 countries on 6 bases in Europe. And, well, these are American weapons. The second part is that the Americans, despite what they said in NPR 2014 and then thereafter, they spoke of a thing called a flexible response. And they said to cater for, various conditions, they must have a flexible response capacity. So they had some low-yield nuclear weapons and going up to the, the Minuteman and the massive weapons. Now, they went in for the low-yield weapons on their SSBN, which were in the Indian Ocean and around. And the W76-2 is what the weapons were, roughly about 5 odd kilotons. And they said that, if you want to use against this in North Korea or someplace, they'll use a 5 kiloton and think weapon. But this came under tremendous pressure and objection from the American Senate itself. Because a lot of people felt that, look, if you use a 5 or a 10 kiloton weapon, firstly, it's good enough to destroy a city. So it's not a tactical nuclear weapon that you call a battlefield nuclear weapon. And secondly, the response from the other part is not going to be 5 or 10, it could be much more. So when you talk of a tactical nuclear weapon, now see, the low-yield nuclear weapons are also called tactical nuclear weapons. These are loose terms. Today, there is no country which has a doctrine for the use of a tactical nuclear weapon, or there is no clear-cut definition as to what a tactical nuclear weapon is. These were basically introduced by the NATO forces against the Warsaw and the USSR in the 50s, etc. And then there was a very famous exercise called Exercise Carte Blanche to test the efficacy of tactical nuclear weapons. And it was a tabletop exercise, and they showed the Russian advance, and it was carte blanche, so they were free to use any amount of nuclear weapons. I think about 330 odd nuclear weapons were used on paper, of course. And the casualties within those 2-3 days in Germany, because Germany was the place where the Russians were being stopped, I think about 1.5 million killed and 3.5 million injured. And that's when they realized that, this kind of warfare cannot work out. India does not talk of tactical nuclear weapons, although Pakistan has always been touting their tactical nuclear weapons, the Nasser, etc. Yes, we believe that they have tactical nuclear weapons. And yes, we believe that they are at liberty to use them against us. But our doctrine is very, very clear. We do not differentiate between tactical or strategic. For us, the red line is the nuclear red line.
Absolutely. What you said about the difference between the tactical and strategic, we do not agree that there is a difference between the two. So here I would like to ask Ambassador Srivastava that Pakistan has been using this nuclear brinkmanship and nuclear blackmail to justify its asymmetric warfare. But we have shown through Balakot and Op Sindoor that there is a space for conventional retaliation. And we have made our red lines quite clear. So even now, they keep dwelling on the same rhetorics. So what is your take on that issue?
Roshan, you're absolutely right. One of the chief outcomes of Operation Sindoor is that it has called off Pakistan's nuclear bluff. Pakistan has been holding out the threat of going nuclear against any Indian conventional response to Pakistan's sub-conventional threat. And this was actually held out during Kargil War. On 29th May 1999, Pakistan's Foreign Secretary Shamshad Ahmad said, "We will use any weapon in our arsenal." There was no such statement during Operation Sindoor. Before Operation Sindoor, there was an indirect statement made by Pakistani ambassador, I think, to Germany. But once the Operation Sindoor got going, they did not make any such statement. So their nuclear bluff that they will retaliate with nuclear weapons against Indian conventional response to acts of terrorism is gone. But we have to see there's a very unstable country, and you have an unstable general.
Very true. You rightly stated that. But moving a little bit forward, General Sharma, when we talk about this limited nuclear war or flexible ground, all this thing came more to light after the Russia-Ukraine war, because Russians have tried to lower their nuclear threshold for the use of nuclear weapons. Because if we see the nuclear doctrine which came out in 2024, the key points what they have said is that there is a broader trigger now, in the sense that nuclear use for a conventional attack by a non-nuclear state, which is backed by a nuclear weapon state, is considered as one of their criteria. However, the fact remains that they will use it only if Russia's sovereignty is threatened. And another thing what they have added is that if any of their allies is attacked, they might consider the criteria, probably to protect Belarus. So do you see this as a move to dissuade the NATO from giving active support to the Ukrainian conflict? Or do you think it is something else? Because I feel until the Russians have a conventional edge, they may not be using any of their nuclear weapons. What are your views on that?
Roshan, before we come to Russia, Ukraine, I'd like to touch upon the India-Pakistan, what was Mrs. Roshan just discussed. You see, we've all been saying Balakot, we call the nuclear bluff, etc., etc. But please understand, I personally, as the ex-nuclear chief, never use this term, the nuclear bluff, which everybody else in the country is using, because there's nothing to do bluffing about nuclear weapons, right? Let's start with 1999 Kargil and 2002 when the mobilization took place and we did not use nuclear weapons. See, 1999 was a very different story. We declared our nuclear capability in 1998. And within a period of 1 year, I'm sure we had not made nuclear weapons or the delivery method. We had the technology, we had everything, but the delivery means were not there. The Strategic Forces Command officially came into existence in 2003. So from 1998, 1999, we had the draft doctrine. And it was only in 2003 that we said, yes, now we have the Strategic Forces Command. This is our doctrine. This is our command and control system. So we had a formalized nuclear structure only in 2003. So to use nuclear weapons in 1999 or even 2002, we must have had a couple of Prithvis, etc., which were there, and we must have made some kind of crude bombs to put on that. So we were really not a proper nuclear weapon power before 2003. So that was the difference. Today, we are a proper organized nuclear weapon power. And even then, when talking about Pakistan, we link up with it. General Musharraf had given an interview a couple of years back before he died to a Japanese newspaper. When they asked him, look, did you consider using nuclear weapons? And he said, yes, we did think about using nuclear weapons, but thank God we did not use nuclear weapons. So he also realized that the retaliation will come. And the retaliation would be very, very strong. So that is how it is India's nuclear strength which counters Pakistan or anyone else from using nuclear weapons against us. See, when you call the nuclear bluff, it's fine, it's bluster, yes. But please remember, why did India go nuclear? India went nuclear to deter anybody from using nuclear weapons against us. And if Pakistan is not talking about nuclear weapons now in Op Sindoor, it's because they know that India has a very strong and a credible nuclear deterrent second strike capability. And our doctrine is very clear. And whatever the world might say, but we are very clear, we will never use a weapon first. NFU is sacrosanct because it's a military, it makes military sense. It's nothing, being righteous and things like this. So the fact that Pakistan did not use the word nuclear because they knew that we mean business. And if they try to use any kind of nuclear weapons, our answer is only very clear: a massive retaliation to inflict unacceptable damage. And my last point about this is that please remember, it is a strong nuclear deterrence which creates space for conventional war. And our credible deterrence that we have today is what creates space for a nuclear war, for a conventional war. And if tomorrow something happens and we hit back even harder, I am very clear that they will not use nuclear weapons because we've shown that we are strong to do that. What Balakot and Uri actually brought out was nothing to do with the nuclear bluff because it was too small an operation to be talking about nuclear. It demonstrated the offensive intent of the government of India, which had never been done before that. And they realized that you do something, we did Uri. They went in for a bigger one, we did Balakot. They went in for something bigger, we've knocked them out, 11 bases knocked out. They do something next, we have no option but to do something even bigger. And even bigger with the confidence of a very strong nuclear second strike capability. So that is my take on Pakistan. And I don't think we should shy away from taking any amount of conventional operations against them. If we were not nuclear, then we had a problem. But today we have a very strong nuclear deterrent second strike capability. I don't think we should even think twice. They do something, we should hit even harder. And the nuclear forces will handle their nuclear forces. I'm not worried about that at all. Yeah, coming to Ukraine and Russia now. Look, there are two versions, the Western version and the Russian version, right? Russia started flexing its nuclear muscles in February 22 before the operation or the special military operation or invasion, whatever you call it. It started. Why did they do that? A lot of people said that they're demonstrating they're going to use nuclear weapons and things like this, but I felt even differently even then. Russia was flexing its nuclear muscles as a posturing to tell NATO that do not get boots on ground. Because if our existence is threatened by NATO physically intervening, we'll have no option but to use our nuclear weapons. So it started with that. And in between, whenever NATO started talking that we'll do ABC, Russia again spoke of nuclear weapons and things like this, to say that, all right, and they've achieved their objective. They've achieved their objective till now that NATO has physically not intervened. And Russia knows that Ukraine, even with the help they're giving from outside, they can handle a conventional war. They're not worried about them. So that is how it is. Now, coming down to what you said now, the change in, you see, frankly, if you look at it, when Belarus stepped in and they said we'll move nuclear weapons to Belarus, the justification given by Putin, I don't think was wrong, because they're saying, fine, we're deploying tactical nuclear weapons or nuclear weapons in Belarus, one more country. Because why? You see, America has deployed tactical nuclear weapons in 5 different countries, in 6 military bases. So if we are moving into one, so what's the big deal? So logically, if you see, there's no big deal that they've done. They moved it to Belarus because America has deployed in 5 non-nuclear countries. They've got 6 bases in 5 non-nuclear countries in Europe. So that is one. Secondly, changing that, see, what if the earlier was, if I may just read out from here, I've got this exact words written down. See, the previous version of Russia's nuclear weapon was Russia reserves the right to use nuclear weapon if an attack on Russia threatens the very existence of the state. Right. What they changed it to was in response to a nuclear attack or any other weapons of mass destruction, if there's critical threat to Russia's sovereignty, territorial integrity, or that of its ally Belarus. So it's broadly what they're saying. When you talk of the very existence, or you talk of sovereignty and territorial, if you look at it willy-nilly, it means the same. It's really not much difference. Yes, when Belarus comes in, the point is that the American nuclear umbrella is over a number of other countries also. It's all NATO countries, plus Japan, plus South Korea. Now the point is that has Russia done something which is out of the world? No, they haven't. So the way I look at it is that what has happened, Russia has not really changed its nuclear doctrine. Well, they've changed words, etc. But Lavrov and Putin have been on television many times saying that, look, there's no question of us using nuclear weapons. Even the Belarus president said that there's no way they'll use their nuclear weapon. So I don't think it's changed very much. It's just a juggling of words that they do. Yeah, Roshan.
I agree what you're saying, because it is one is the NATO view what they think and one is the Russian view what they are saying. But the truth lies in between the two of the two postures. Now,
see, I'm sorry to interrupt. Sorry. So if I may say the last line. Yeah. The major change was the doctrine allows for nuclear retaliation if Russia is attacked by a non-nuclear state backed by a nuclear power. Now, yes, if you had NATO people coming on ground, or there's so much of assistance given to Ukraine that is going to trouble Russia by a NATO power, then it's treating it as a nuclear weapon power. Because if Ukraine was given long range weapons, etc., by like UK saying now, Germany saying now, so they said fine, we'll treat it as the nuclear weapon power. So that is the major difference that it is. Yeah.
Yes, quite true. Now here I would like to bring in Ambassador Srivastava. With the coming of Trump, we see that there is a lot of tension between the European Union and the Americans. So do you feel that there will be more horizontal proliferation as far as Europe is concerned? Because NATO has also asked its partner to increase its defense budget. And for example, if you take Poland, Poland has said that it will keep all its options open, including nuclear. And the Poland, Estonia, Latvia, they have all announced their intentions from withdrawing from the Ottawa Treaty, which was a mine ban treaty. So what do you feel, how it is going to pan out in Europe especially?
Before answering your question, let me just go back to the earlier issue and one of the points made by General Sharma, what I said about 99 was not about the Indian actions. It was Pakistan which was threatening use of any weapons in 99, 1 year after the nuclear test, when they certainly did not have the delivery. So we have expanded our envelope. In 99, we did not cross the LOC. Balakot and all, it was a very shallow operation. So this time we have hit Muridke and Bahawalpur in Pakistan. So we have expanded the envelope of conventional action, which is what General Sharma is also saying. Now, coming back to your question about impact on Europe and the horizontal proliferation, there is a lot of nervousness in Europe whether the American nuclear umbrella will hold. And right at the outset, I think France had made a statement that they are willing to provide nuclear umbrella. But I don't think that will satisfy East European countries, because there are still memories. I was ambassador to Czech Republic of what they consider the Western betrayal. Czechoslovakia was allowed to be trampled by Germany. So I think they will not be quite satisfied with a French or the British umbrella. They would still prefer an American umbrella. Will they go for their own? I doubt very much. These are small countries. They don't have the depth, and they know that.
General Singh, General Sharma, I would also like to ask you this, that the American umbrella is also there with the South Koreans and the Japanese. So do you feel that they are also quite nervous? And if you see the domestic, if you ask them, there were elections and there were polls which were taking place in Japan and South Korea, especially in South Korea. A lot of people wanted that they should have their independent nuclear policy. So what do you feel about it?
See, we're talking about now South Korea and Japan, like I mentioned, are under the nuclear umbrella, and they're both under threat from nuclear weapon powers. Now, before giving my answer, I'd like to give two quotes. One, long back from Henry Kissinger, right? Henry Kissinger said the credibility of the American nuclear guarantee is based on the perception of its willingness to commit mutual suicide. Right? Second, the France has got its own nuclear weapons, etc. They don't bank. I'll quote General Charles de Gaulle. During the Cold War, this prospect of embodied in the question posed by General Charles de Gaulle, whether the US president is really willing to sacrifice Chicago for Lyon. Now, the same question is being asked by the Japanese and the South Koreans. Is USA prepared to take a strike on New York, Washington, or Chicago in a bid to save Japan or South Korea? The answer is obviously no. And especially with Mr. Trump coming to the chair, the answer is definitely no. So what do? Today, you'll find that the way things are going, you will have more people developing nuclear weapons. And like Mr. Srivastava said, Iran will be one of them. Now, see, they signed they had the pact in 2015, and they said, fine, you let us do what we're doing in peaceful stuff, and we're not going for nuclear weapons. But now that the attack has gone, and I'm sure Iran is now going to go full hog and going for nuclear weapons. South Korea, again, what do? Over 70% of the people in South Korea, they feel we must have our own nuclear weapons. Japan, till the previous Prime Minister, late Mr. Shinzo Abe, they had, said, fine, we can go. And today things are different. In fact, I'll give you a very interesting anecdote. I was, I think, in Tokyo, and we had, discussions on this. And there was a gentleman who spoke on, why Japan should not go nuclear, etc., etc., etc. An elderly gentleman, part of the government later. So we were chatting in the evening, and I said, do you really believe in what you're saying? What is this for that? No names. He says, I fully agree with what you're saying. What Japan should do is we should take on lease a couple of SSNs capable of mounting nuclear weapons when required. See, everybody realizes that the Americans will not step out and risk a strike on their soil for anybody else. And unfortunate, but you'll find that you will have more countries developing nuclear weapons gradually.
Very true. And Japan has brought Tomahawk missiles from the Americans. And you never know how future pans out. So what we'll do is now we'll take certain questions. The first question is, the nations west of the Sindhu have a mindset of promptly going into action made when thus their conflict are usually long drawn and bloody. Your views? Basically, he wants to say that probably this conflict is going to be a long drawn and not a short one.
You talking about Iran?
Pardon?
No, which exact country are you talking about? If it's Iran, I'll request Mr. Srivastava to take it on, and then I can step in. Yeah, he's the expert on Iran.
I think if we take, for example, the current conflict which is going on between Israel and Iran, so you feel it will be a long drawn one or it will be a short one? Anyone?
He's unmuted.
Your mic.
I don't like the term meat grinder, action mode, and so on. You know, we are characterizing other people. We don't know that well. But if it is references to Iran-Israel conflict, I think there will be a series of skirmishes. This will not be one battle. This will be a long-drawn affair.
Yeah.
No, I fully endorse that because, I said I fully endorse what he's saying because unlike any other country, there are no land borders in between. They've got a 1,000-kilometer gap between them. So I guess, and you can't fire, aircrafts and missiles on a daily basis. You can't. So I guess it's going to be a long-run affair, and you'll have times of intense, kind of a conflict to stop for a while, and that's the only way they can continue, I guess. Yeah.
Yes. The economies of both the countries will be impacted. There's another one, nuclear limiter or otherwise, strategic or tactical, has radioactivity by default. Large population would get killed. I mean, this General Sharma, you would like to talk about it, and it's a fact.
Look, it's not just a radioactivity. A nuclear weapon is a nuclear weapon. And, when you're talking about, we saw what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki when it was just a 15 kiloton or a 20 kiloton weapon. And you had over 1 million people getting killed. Today, you're talking of, much, much more than that. So, yes. And like I said, there's nothing called a tactical nuclear weapon because the American tactical nuclear weapon is from 0.3 to 400 or 340 kilotons. That's huge. So in any nuclear war, irrespective of what is being used, not just the radioactivity, the entire thing, you're going to have devastation. You've got lots and lots of people getting killed. And like you see in Japan, the effect goes on for years and years and decades. So I think nuclear war is very serious business. The taboo has held for about 80 years now, since 1945. And I don't think anybody can use a nuclear weapon in a hurry even today. Yeah.
So we had discussed a lot of issues today. So I just want to ask any last thoughts. I'll start with Ambassador Srivastava. Any last thought about this Iran-Israel conflict which is going on?
I think from India's point of view, and that applies also to other countries, any conflict in this region, which carries about 20% of world's oil supply through Hormuz Strait, has grave repercussions for Indian economy, for economies of other countries. $1 increase in the price of oil adds 14,000 crores rupees to India's annual import bill. And there has been a 7% escalation in simply last 24 hours. So if there's an exchange and a long exchange, this is bad news, not just for India, but for economies, for the entire world. American economy, the last quarter, I think it's very close to recession. So a long drawn war is going to be bad news for all concerned.
And
No, I fully endorse what he's saying. I fully endorse what he's saying. And for us, see, fortunately or unfortunately, both are good friends. We have good relations with Iran, good relations with Israel, and they've been helping us, and we've been helping vice versa. But it's going to have definitely a negative effect on our economy, among other things. And even today, you find that the Sensex has gone down, which was crossing 82,000 last couple of days, is down to about 81 something. Not really crashed, I would say, but definitely it's come down by a couple of 100 points. Yeah. It's going to affect our economy in the long run if this continues. Yeah.
But you feel that UN is really not able to do anything. I mean, your views, and even for that matter, even the atomic and IAEA, they have also not been very effective as far as Iran and Israel conflict is concerned. Would you like to comment on that?
Roshan, sorry, Mrs. Srivastava, please. Yeah.
I dealt with UN for 8 years in the Ministry of External Affairs. And I must say that the successes and failures of the United Nations are successes and failures of the member states, because UN is an intergovernmental body and is reflected most in the actions of the Security Council, which reflect the interests of the individual permanent member states. It doesn't reflect any collective will. And that explains the paralysis. Whenever there's a crisis, there were very short interregnums where in the 90s, when Russia and America were on the same side, it barely lasted a decade. And we are now back to the Cold War period. So UN's capacity to intervene is very, very limited because of the actions and decisions made by member states.
Well, I feel the UN is long overdue for a complete revamp. You can't have the system which was, put into place so many years back, continuing now. The entire situation, the world has changed. 5 P5s, you can question the very right of being there. We question what exactly are these guys doing. So I think the UN needs a complete revamp because it's not been successful anywhere. And Roshan lesser said about the Atomic Energy Commission, etc. Because if you look at it, which treaty, arms limitation or reduction treaty has worked? You name a single treaty which has worked, nothing has worked. The famous non-proliferation treaty, I think, firstly, they are talking of 5 nuclear weapon states where there are 9 nuclear weapon states today. So they have not officially recognized the other 4, though they say they are the trouble creators, etc. The fact is, it's not a question of the pride and prestige or something going with the other 9. No, it's a question of shared responsibility to ensure that the world is a safe place to live in. And you have Pakistan and North Korea, they get off at a tangent whenever they want to. And what has anybody done about it? Either the UN or the Atomic Energy Commission, nothing about it. Even an NPT, if you feel, at the NPT, among the treaties which have still lasted, the START has been shoved out of the window, everything else has gone out of the window. But even your NPT, your PrepComs and all which are on for the next year, they cannot come to anything because if you look at it, the 5 P5 have themselves gone against the NPT. The 3 main pillars of the NPT, if I remember correctly, one of course was peaceful use of atomic energy. Second was non-proliferation, and third was reduction in nuclear weapons. Now, the members themselves have gone into proliferation. China has helped Pakistan make its nuclear weapons. America has happily looked the other way because of their interest in Pakistan through Pressler amendments, presidential. See, that's it. France and UK have helped Israel to become nuclear weapon powers. So what is left? The P5 are not interested in maintaining the treaty. I think everything needs a revamp. It's a new world order total today. Everything has to be changed, absolutely changed. Yeah.
I think India can play a major role as an interlocutor in most of the conflicts. Like, for example, we are good friends with both Iran and Israel. So probably we can be the mediator, as we had been rightly stating. So thank you so much for the podcast. And I really thank both of you. And we discussed so many issues. And thank you for a lovely podcast. Thank you so much.
Roshan, always a pleasure. Thanks so much. Bye. Bye. All the best.